So hey everyone, it's Trevor Turnbull here with Sports Networker, and I'm really excited to introduce all of you to Tom Joly. How's it going, Tom?
I'm good, doing great. How are you, Trevor?
I'm excellent, thank you. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Tom, he is actually the associate editor. Maybe you can tell us your role again.
Okay, associate managing editor at the New York Times.
There we go. And previously the senior sports editor with the New York Times, correct?
Right, correct. Yeah.
Got it. There we go. So I actually met Tom, we were just talking about this, about 2.5 years ago at a sports networking event that was hosted by Russell Scabetti, thebusinessofsports.com, for those of you that are familiar with Russell. And we actually haven't connected since, so it's really is a thrill for me to be able to chat with Tom here on this interview, because I know I mentioned to him that I use a photo that we took together in a lot of my own presentations talking about my own transition into the sports industry. So Tom, it's a thrill to chat with you here today.
I'm glad to reconnect with you as well.
Excellent. So Tom, let's talk about your rise into this industry and into the role that you're currently in here. Maybe you can take us back a few years and just talk about how you got into the journalism space.
Sure. I actually majored in it in college, and it seems like forever ago, but I started at a little tiny paper in Central Ohio, 9,000 circulation paper, as a reporter in covering city news, and went on from there to Annapolis, Maryland, a little bigger paper, again covering city news, and then became an editor and ultimately moved into sports there. But again, it was this 35,000 circulation paper. Yeah. Was there for about 3 years, went on to Pittsburgh, stayed in sports then, and became deputy sports editor in Pittsburgh at the Pittsburgh Press. Unfortunately, that paper, we were ahead of our time. That paper went out of business and in 1993. And I was lucky enough to catch on at the New York Times, which was expanding its sports coverage. Came in as a copy editor there and worked my way up to assistant sports editor. And then went over to the news side on the news desk. And we were responsible for page A1. And it just happened to be the Bush-Gore presidential campaign that led to the craziness, not being able to declare a winner for 4 weeks or whatever, and 9/11, unfortunately, and all kinds of other amazing events. So that was an incredibly news-packed 3-year span. And then in 2003, I became sports editor at the Times, and I held that job for 8 years. And that was a big time of transition, too, for other reasons. Yeah. Mostly because of the growth of the web and Facebook and Twitter and all the other social networking elements that became such a key part of what we were doing.
Yeah, no kidding. I actually was pulling up all the different things I could about your background today, your Twitter account and LinkedIn profile and everything else, and I actually came across an interview that you did with Lewis back in October of 2009. I think it was in Cleveland, actually.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys were talking about, it was actually leading up to the Olympics that were actually here in Vancouver in February 2010. You're talking about those changes that were happening at the Times and all the cool new technologies that were coming out that were top secret that couldn't be revealed at the time. And, but just that changing landscape and how your subscribers online or viewers online was far exceeding the amount of people that were actually subscribers to the physical newspaper, correct?
Oh, absolutely, and it's even more so today. That's the case.
Mm-hmm. So you've obviously have a wealth of experience in a number of different areas, and you're doing something that you love every single day, which is great. Is there anybody in particular along that path that helped mentor you, or that you can think back to, helped kind of get you to where you are today?
I've been lucky that I've really, along my career, I've encountered some really great people almost every step of the way that have been, encouraged me and, talked about doing new things and trying to push the envelope as much as you could within the bounds of what we're doing. And I think that helped kind of inspire me to be open to, at the Times, we were the first department at the Times to really embrace Twitter in a big way and start using it to, push out our stories and communicate with our readers in a way that was impossible before. I think one of the great things about it that you can interact with people. You know, it used to be you'd have a static newspaper, it would drop on somebody's doorstep. You had no idea if people were reading it, you know, what they were reading, and the only communication you'd have is if somebody typed up a letter and put it in the mail, which was, you know, asking a lot. Now you can interact with people so simply, and you know, sometimes they can be abusive, I guess, but that's rare, I find, and especially if somebody says something kind of nasty and you respond saying, "Gee, I'm sorry you feel that way," they're kind of shocked sometimes that you actually respond to them, and I frequently will get a response like, "Oh, I didn't really mean that. I love the Times. You know, we're you know, I just didn't think anybody would read that, or I figured you weren't really paying attention," and that kind of thing. So. It's just been great to be able to interact with people, and we're still kind of I think there are still opportunities to use those tools for reporting in a way that goes beyond what we've done so far. Although we've done a little bit of it.
Yeah, well, the real time nature of Twitter is definitely, you know, speaking to the idea of using Twitter as a tool to report the news, and you also point out, you know, people putting stuff out there, not realizing that somebody else might potentially be listening, especially the person that you might be calling out. I know that's one of the things that is usually kind of a wow factor for a lot of people when they get onto tools like Twitter, is that, you know, they might reach out to somebody and mention them or retweet something that they say, and that person talks back to them, and all of a sudden somebody that they felt was, you know, completely unreachable previously is all of a sudden, you know, at least replying to what they have to say. Maybe not engaging in full conversations, but replying.
Right, exactly. And you know, people have pointed things out, a slight error in a story or something like that, and you know, that's great. It's cool to be responsive and interact with people in that way. Yeah.
Now, we talk to a lot of people, and we actually say this on a lot of the webinars that we do with aspiring sports business students and whatnot. The value of taking some of those, you know, relationships that you're building online and bringing them offline to an actual live networking event to meet people face to face. Maybe speak to you know, what you feel is the most valuable thing for people that might want to break into the industry. Is it internships? You know, is it their education, networking events, online, offline? What's your thoughts on that?
I kind of embrace all those things in a way, you know. I mean, I always tell people, you know, I get asked a lot about breaking into the business as a reporter, and I always tell people that the basics still apply, and I think that's true in any field. You know, you have to you have to be able to report. If you're going to be a reporter, you have to be able to write, and so there's no magic in terms of, you know, understanding how to produce a website, for instance. You know, if you want to go in that direction, great. But if you want to be a reporter, I think it's most important to be able to interact with people as a reporter, be able to write and tell a story in a fair way, in a balanced way. But then beyond that, I think you've got to be open to you know, all the new tools that are out there. I think they change rapidly. You know, Pinterest is the latest new thing that everybody's embracing, and obviously has a lot of interesting elements to it that could be used in our business and in many other businesses, I think. But you know, we're still learning what we can do with Facebook. I just saw where NPR was geotagging certain stories that were targeted for instance, I think the example was Seattle, where they geotagged a story for Seattle on Facebook. And so only the people who lived in Seattle could see it, but it gave that particular story a lot more attention to the Seattle readers. You know, I think just being open to and paying attention to all those new avenues out there is crucially important. And, you know, you mentioned networking. I think that's a great thing to do, especially, I mean, it's just so, you know, there are obviously so many people are connected through Twitter, LinkedIn, and all those other things. And building relationships beyond just the online aspect of it is great, because, you know, I mean, that's how we met, right? You know, Lewis Howes, I met him initially through that kind of, we met at that event in Cleveland that you mentioned, and we've become friends and stayed in touch. And Lewis, who's a lot younger than me, has taught me a lot. So it's, those kinds of relationships and the people you meet that way are just really, really important, I think.
No kidding. No kidding. So you mentioned something there too, the idea of, dipping your hands into all these different platforms and not losing sight of the fact that you still have to have the basic skills if you want to be a reporter, right? You need to be able to write. You need to be able to have an opinion, that type of a thing, right?
Right.
Would you say that it's like, say somebody was to come and apply for a position with the New York Times, and would their experience as, say, a blogger be valuable? Would that be something that you could look at and see what their experience is, their writing style, that type of thing?
Sure. It always depends on what direction we're going in. But if somebody develops a blog and develops a following, then that person becomes valuable. I don't have an example in sports, but Nate Silver, who actually started in sports and then became very involved in politics and created the at 538, or excuse me, it's the 538 blog. That's the Twitter tag is at 538. But he did a fantastic job at sort of analyzing the last presidential campaign, and he had written a lot for the Times, and the Times ended up hiring him and acquiring his blog because of the following he'd built.
Wow.
So that's definitely a way to do it. But even if you're not trying to get to the Times necessarily, obviously developing a voice, finding an area of expertise. If you want to be a web producer, there are tremendous opportunities there too. And having a journalism background, if you, for instance, wanted to come to the Times, is an important aspect of that. But I think there are it used to be you could be a reporter or an editor, and now there are subsets in both those groups. You can be a reporter who's a blogger. You can be a specialist reporter. You can engage in social media in some way and become an expert in that field. Mm-hmm. The same with editing. All those different avenues exist for them, and video and multimedia and all those things now are part of our business, which are entirely new jobs.
Right. Yeah. And you said that the Times actually encourages you and other employees to use these tools and use them from your own voice as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that it's been one of the smart things that the Times did. A lot of news organizations, in particular, when Twitter first began to emerge as a tool for people, a lot of news organizations established, we got to have requirements, we got to have rules about this.
Right.
And I think it had a kind of chilling effect. Now, granted, some organizations may have had people that weren't responsible in handling Twitter. And if that's the case, then I guess you do have to have rules. But yeah. I think we were just talking about this at a meeting I was at last week, that there have been very, very few incidents where Times reporters or editors have embarrassed themselves. In fact, I can't even really think of one. I'm sure there's been one or two, but yeah. I think most people there recognize, hey, I am representing the Times, and so anything I say not only is my own voice, but it has a reflection on the Times. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, make observations, or our political reporters, for instance, will often monitor a debate, for instance, and tweet out what the different candidates are, how they're coming across, and that kind of thing.
Right.
But there's a difference between saying someone seems to be losing footing on this debate, as opposed to this person's an idiot.
Right. So. Yeah. Having an opinion, but not such a strong opinion that it might put you in a bad spot, right?
Right, exactly. And being analytical rather than completely opinionated, right?
Right. Yeah. So, is there any kind of policy then with the Times? Like, I know I've seen others with big corporations, like Ford comes to mind, and Kodak. They have their one pager. It's not a 45-page manual. Rather, it's just we expect you to act in a responsible way, and that you are in fact representing our company at all times, no matter what even if you put on your Twitter account that my thoughts are my own.
Right.
Does the Times have anything like that?
No. Well, the Times policy is basically the first sentence that you said. Remember that you're representing the New York Times as well as yourself. And,
right.
I mean, that's really as far as it's ever gone. And I was, as you mentioned, I was one of the early adopters of Twitter, and we had a meeting. I was brought into a meeting where that was the subject. Should we adopt rules? Should we have a policy? And a lot of us said, no, I really think that it's better to let people have a voice. If there's a problem, we can address it with an individual, but let people, experiment in this space and find ways to make it a useful tool for them. And like I said, everybody really has done that. And it's amazing the following that a lot of our people have built up, especially some of our reporters and columnists who, again, have a way to interact with readers that are interesting and readers that are interested in interacting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is pretty amazing. You referenced it earlier, the whole letter to the editor as it used to be, right? You would actually get a physical letter, and on one page of the paper, you would see a question and an answer, right? And
right.
Now
I get a response when I'll post something, and people have obviously not read more than the headline, and they'll comment on it. So.
Yeah, which actually, you bring up a great point there too. The importance of all different aspects of writing too, because people's capacity to absorb information now is much more limited. I think we're scanners, right? We like to look at things really quickly, right. which is why Twitter has really been so popular. I think too. It's a little bit easier to absorb for most people. So let's talk about your current role here right now. Let's just give us a glimpse into what does a typical day look like, and tell us what you do on a day-to-day basis.
All right. Well, now I go to work I get into work around 2:30 in the afternoon, and we have so my main responsibility is overseeing the news report, both for the newspaper and for our website.
Right.
And there are two, that we're working to integrate the operations, but they are two very different things to do, obviously, because the paper is much more production oriented. It's, as I said before, a static thing. You print it once, and whatever's there is there.
Yeah.
The web is obviously evolving moment by moment, and so I come in at 2:30, begin to get a lay of the land. We have a 4:00 news meeting that I lead, where department representatives talk about their top stories, both for the paper and for our website. And then after that meeting, there's a group of our editors who lay out page A1 of the paper and plan how that's going to look, and I'm involved with that, just kind of discussing it. And then I'll go back and meet with our website folks, and we mainly talk about the homepage. And one of the things we've changed about the way we do our homepage is that we try to strategize a lot more than we used to. Think about what stories that we have that are going in the paper that need to go up right away because they're newsy. There's news involved, but also enterprise stories that that nobody else has, that we can hold on to and maybe put them on the website in the next morning, rather than putting everything up at night, and then when people come to the website in the morning, there may be nothing new. So we try to plan it a little bit so that we have our top quality content is evident on the homepage at all times, but not not in a way that it's stale or static.
Mm-hmm. So it's really responsive. There's always something new coming in, right? I imagine it's quite hectic.
Pretty much. Well, it varies from night to night, but there haven't been a lot of slow nights, especially with the political campaign going on and all of the news out of the Middle East and the Arab Spring. But that's one of the things I do is I'll be looking at, say, 30 news websites all night long, just making sure that we're up to speed. Nobody's found out something we don't know about. And then looking for news that might be breaking. I've TweetDeck open all the time, so that I see if some news thing is starting to catch fire in somewhere, Syria or whatever, or sadly the Whitney Houston death quickly. Those kinds of things you hear about quickly on Twitter. Which is another reason I think that it's been so fantastic. To me, it's the number one news alert system going right now.
Wow.
So, if we see something, I'll contact whoever the department representative is, department head, and say, hey, is this something we should be on? And if it is, then we jump on it and get our reporters mobilized. And go from there.
Yeah. So I was actually just going to ask you that. Would you say that Twitter is the #1 source for that real time information? And of course, I think you referenced the fact too that you always are, checking the facts before going and retweeting something that might be a big breaking news story.
Right. Yeah. No. I think for sure it's because it's enabled us to gather multiple news sources and follow different reporters from all different organizations from all around the world. And people tweet out the news as soon as they find out about it, which is great when it's right. But occasionally, as we know, that actually not too long ago, somebody actually tweeted out that Joe Paterno had died when he actually had not at that point, and some other people picked it up, and that was, disaster. Really a horrible thing to have retweeted. As long as you check into, verify the information, or say that it couldn't be verified if in cases where it's in the Middle East or something like that, then it's a great resource.
Yeah. Well, I think another example of that, and it's actually in your neck of the woods, was the fake Bon Jovi death.
Oh, right. Right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Which he actually replied by taking a photo of himself holding a piece of paper saying, I'm still alive, don't worry, or something to that effect.
Yeah, right.
He tweeted it
That's
out.
Right.
So
there's like anything, I think there probably are pranksters out there who are now trying to get attention with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. So I got 2 more questions for you, Tom, and then we'll let you go here. First of all, if there was one piece of advice that you could give to students, any individual that's looking to break into the sports industry or to be a news reporter, whatever it happens to be, what would that advice be? What's your best #1 tip? Sometimes it's tough to narrow down to one, I know.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different things, but I think the #1 thing is that and is this a tip? I don't know, but you have to have passion for it, and you have to show your passion, and that means, being willing to bust your butt and go out and prove yourself. I think, it's one thing to say you want to do it, but there are a lot of people out there who say they want to do it, and the people who succeed are the ones who go out and show me rather than tell me, and I feel like, not feeling entitled, but really going out and showing it. Even if you got to work for free, even if you got to take a free internship or something like that, if you find some other way to support yourself and work on weekends, volunteer. If you have a good idea, maybe some sports organization or news organization that doesn't, for example, have a good social media person. Maybe you can say, hey, I'll do that. You don't have to pay me. I'm going to go show you the value of this and just go out and do it. I think that's, does that count as a tip?
That's absolutely a tip. No, and it's hugely undervalued, I think, sometimes, that people will actually proactively go out and look for work to do to try and make somebody else's life easier or to add extra value that they might not have known about. I actually just interviewed Oscar Ugaz, who is the guy who started all of the social media stuff for Real Madrid Football Club last week. And he said they hired their community manager based on that exact type of initiative. They had somebody who was proactively, monitoring conversations around their brand and happened to have spoke 4 languages, which didn't hurt either. But he essentially positioned himself to move into that role because he was proactive in the way that he approached it. So that's absolutely critical advice and tips that you just gave there. I thought it was great. So last thing, two more things actually, but one's really quick. The first one is how do people connect with you online?
Well, my Twitter account is @TomJolly, one word, TomJolly, and that's probably the best thing, @TomJolly.
Okay. And I also noticed that you have a Flickr account here too. I had to call this out because I just looked at this and I thought some of your photos were just amazing. But anyways, we don't need to call too much attention to that unless you want to. Is that
go
passion?
ahead? It's Tom Jolly 55. Is that it? I'm not sure I forget what my Flickr account number or name is.
It's TAJ 55.
TAJ.
Yeah. Some great landscape shots there. Is that a passion?
It is. It's my my avocation, I guess. That's how I that's how I get a little creativity on the side.
Nice, nice, yeah.
Thank you for looking.
Yeah, no, I really like the landscape photos, and then actually I'm looking right now at a picture of one of your dogs with one of his legs straight up in the air. Quite a creative shot itself, too. Okay, so here's my last question. I got to ask you this one because I know which team I'm a fan of, but are you a Rangers fan or a Devils fan? You live in New Jersey, you work in New York.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, I'm a Penguins fan.
Oh, there you go. Well, your background is actually from Pittsburgh, right? Are you from that area?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I've got, Penguins, Steelers, and Pirates. Although there hasn't been much to cheer about lately there. But I obviously I do live here, and what I always say about the teams here is I always root for a good story. So
right.
You can always root for all the teams here, and the great story in this area in sports is Jeremy Lin, who just came out of nowhere, and in the last 8 days has been this sensation for the Knicks, and it's just a fantastic story. And actually, I got up. He played Saturday night, played Friday and Saturday, had great games both days. And I got up and looked at Facebook the next morning, and it was just the news feed was just one story after another. And people were he's Taiwanese, Asian American, and two people who I know in the sports world sent me stories, first person stories that they had written about what his success has meant to them. So
really?
it's a really cool thing that's going on, and we'll see if it lasts. But those are the kinds of things I love about sports.
Well, because he's only played like 4 games, I think.
Yeah, basically started 4 games, came off the bench and scored 25 points a week ago Saturday. Started 4 games, and he's, I think I heard that he's only the only player other than LeBron James to average more than 20 points in his first 2 or 3 starts or something like that. I mean,
really?
Nobody had even heard of the guy. I mean, so we had actually written some stories about him, but until you've really scored some points and made some gained some notice, nobody really pays attention.
Well, one of the stats I heard about him last night was they said that in those 4 games, he's actually averaged more points than Kobe Bryant, too. So
that's right. Well, and that was the huge game when he played Kobe Bryant on Friday night.
Yeah.
And everybody was waiting, all right, now, because they played 3 kind of so-so teams up to that point.
Yeah.
And he outscored him. He outscored Kobe Bryant, which really, really opened some eyes.
So there's obviously a lot of, and we're kind of going on a little bit longer here, but this is a really interesting topic. There's lots of attractive features to him from a story perspective. There's the fact that he is Asian American, and you're seeing it in the crowds even too. You're seeing that affect the crowds. The fact that he kind of came out of nowhere, just talent-wise, and then his religious beliefs is also becoming a news story in itself too.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is quite interesting, and I'm not sure which one might be generating the most interest. Like, if he stopped playing so well, do you think we'd still hear as much about him?
No, definitely not. And the other element about it is that he came out of nowhere on a team that was really struggling. Both Amari Stoudemire and Carmelo Anthony had been out, and even when they were playing, they haven't played well. And one of the criticisms of the team has been that these guys kind of tend to be ball hogs, to be blunt about it. Yeah. And here comes Jeremy Lin, who is, the missing piece to this puzzle, it seems like, even though neither of those guys is playing, but he's distributes the ball, shares the ball, very humble guy. And it's kind of like the magic elixir for the Knicks right now. And I think that's what also has struck a lot of fans is the humility.
Yeah. He kind of has this Steve Nash demeanor, it seems to me. He's a little guy for the NBA. He's probably 6'3", I would imagine, but passes the ball. He could be a good compliment for that team. We'll see how it shakes. Absolutely. We'll see how it shakes out the rest of the year.
Leave it to you to bring it back to Canada, right? With Steve Nash.
Well, we have to. Steve's like an icon up here in Vancouver, definitely.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, Tom, again, thanks very much for doing this. Really appreciate it. It's been great connecting with you again. And definitely hope that we can meet up in person one of these days soon.
Absolutely. I look forward to that.
All right.
Take care, Trevor.
Thanks, Tom.